Welcome back to SFBN, your home for the Pennsylvania State Championship games. Trey Matthews joined alongside a special guest. This man carved out a legacy for himself behind the bench. He's a 5-time NCAA champion, an 11-time Hockey East tournament champion, and a 9-time Beanpot tournament champion. And he spent 50 years coaching at Clarkson, Bowling Green, and Boston College. Hockey Hall of Famer, please welcome Jerry York. Coach, how we doing?
Excellent, Trey. Glad to be on the show. I so enjoy hockey, and when my grandson's playing, I try to make every effort to get from Boston down here to watch. And terrific game so far. Quaker Valley started quick. Hershey's back in it, so it's going to be an interesting third period.
So you just mentioned it. Your grandson, Colin York, plays for the Quakers. They're up big heading into the third period. How would you assess his game and also his teammates' game, both as a coach and as a loving grandfather?
It's hard to separate, He's doing a good job. He's checking well. He's, finishing his checks, which I like. But he's learning so much from Kevin Quinn. He is outstanding. I couldn't be more fortunate to have someone like Kevin with all his knowledge, and he's been in 30 years here. To be with Colin all the time. And I love high school hockey. I really do. I know kids rush off to juniors, but this is the experience that creates memories for your lifetime.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about your tenure as a coach. As I previously mentioned, you had stops at Clarkson, Bowling Green, and also Boston College. Reflecting on your 50-year-long career, you're a Hall of Famer. What are you the most proud of behind the bench?
I think watching our young kids come in at 18 or 19 years old and just growing and becoming better in all aspects of their lives. We produce a lot of NHL players over my career, but I'm just as excited when, players go into the teaching profession or players go into finance and graduate and become meaningful husbands and, family-oriented people. I think we really stress that at all the sites I've been in, and it's great to see that materialize. I meet some people now, they have 2 or 3 kids, and they're working on their career, and so that makes me excited.
So let's talk about where college hockey is today. It seems to have gotten so much bigger throughout the years. When looking at it from afar, how would you assess college hockey where it is now compared to where you started off back in the 1970s?
Well, I think it's just getting better and better. Like, maybe my first recruit at Clarkson, Dave Taylor, was maybe my best recruit. Went on to an unbelievable career at Los Angeles Kings, a Hall of Fame player in his own right. But we didn't have 3 lines of that, or even now 4 lines. But as it's grown, and we used to just recruit locally. At Clarkson, we're right across the border, and or northern New York, and Bowling Green, the same thing, right across Windsor or in the Ohio, Michigan area. BC, the exact same. But now we recruit players in California, from Florida. The game has grown so much in the United States, and even internationally, we've got to have players from Finland and Sweden come to BC. But the way the growth of college hockey and USA Hockey, Scott Pollock is a former player of mine, and he's the head of a lot of the development programs at USA Hockey. But it's unbelievable that the players can come from, before they just wanted to be quarterbacks. They grew up in, Texas or Florida or point guards. But now we're seeing the influx of NHL teams in those areas, Arizona, and, so in that place, I want to be a left wing now, Just imagine some of our top NFL quarterbacks, if they had the option, maybe they would have become left wings and become all-star left wings. So it's great to see the growth of it. Philadelphia and Pittsburgh have long produced terrific players with the help from the Philadelphia Flyers. I had an opportunity to coach both Gaudreaus right across the river here. Tony Vos was right from the little Flyers organization. And Pittsburgh's produced Pat Way for me and Parker Milner. So there's been a terrific number of players from this, Philadelphia area, the Pittsburgh area.
Well, let's talk about some of the players you've had the pleasure of coaching. you're in the Hall of Fame. Rob Blake is in the Hall of Fame, one of your former players. Brian Dumoulin, we are in the state of Pennsylvania. He hoisted 2 cups with the Penguins. Chris Kreider in the NHL. How does it feel to see some of the players that you've coached, both past and present, still in the NHL and making a name for themselves?
Oh, it's great. You know, Brooks Orpik, let's not forget him. 2 cups here. But it's an opportunity for them to really do something special with their lives early. But, 35, 38, they got a lot of years left. And I think that, the hockey's great and the success they have is terrific. But I watch them when they finish pro, and there've really been some outstanding players do that and go on to successful careers, whether in, NHL or just back in the business world. So, but it's fun to watch some of these players. And Johnny Gaudreau was so special. I mean, I reached out to Guy and Jane a little while ago. I didn't realize we were so close to Hollydale and that part. So hopefully they might be able to show up here for the 3rd period.
So I want to talk about Johnny Gaudreau, one of the greatest American players in this generation, gone too soon. Both him and his brother played under you. What can you say about the legacy that both Gaudreau brothers left on the East Coast and Southern Jersey, the Blue Jackets, the Flames, all that? Like I said, gone too soon, but what can you say about Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau?
Just terrific young people. And, the credit goes to the family. The Gaudreaus raised 2 all-stars, not just in hockey, but in life itself. It's such an imprint on, this area, but also as they get into college, all of a sudden everybody's talking about the Gaudreaus, and then when we went to Calgary and Columbus, I marvel at the job that Guy and Jane did raising those young guys.
Now, when focusing on this game in particular, you've won a lot of championships behind the bench. What's going through the mind of the coach? We know what's going through the mind of the players, but as a coach, how do you remain calm, cool, and collected to try to guide these guys to a championship?
Well, I think, and both coaches here have got different tasks. Hershey's thinking about, let's get the next one, and let's start rolling a little bit, and maybe we can win a state championship. Where Kevin Quinn says, now let's not change, here's how we're playing, stay confident in yourself, and let's go win a championship. It's been a long time, from what I understand now, talking to all my friends, new friends here in this area, that the West hasn't won many of these A divisions. I think back to what you said, Trey, 14 or 12 since they've won a state title. So the shift has certainly been all East in hockey. So it's a chance for the western part of the state in Pittsburgh and Quaker Valley to, start creating their own dynasty that way.
I got to ask you this while we got some time. We already mentioned some of the players you've been able to coach, from champions to players still in the NHL. Do you have any funny stories or some weird superstitions that you want to share to the folks back home?
I think it's just, hockey's just so much fun. And Chris Kreider was one of my all-time favorites at BC, and Ned had a long career with New York Rangers. But I remember him coming to BC, and he was so used to just winding it up like his Bobby Orr all the way, prep school hockey. And I said, we're going to take the blinders off you. This is not a horse race. Take those off. And what are you talking about blinders, coach? Yeah, you got to see the other people, And he became a pretty good player, utilizing other people. He became a better player that way.
So, Hockey Hall of Famer, elected in 2019. How does that feel, just reflecting on everything you've accomplished? Because very select few can say that they're one of the best to do something.
I never thought of that. I wanted to play college, and I grew up in the Boston area, so Boston College was my dream school. And, I was never thinking back then of pro hockey or Hall of Fame. I just never thought of that, But to be honored like that and go to Montreal and to go to Toronto and look out that night and see the people in the stands, it was amazing. Mario Lemieux was there, and former BC player Billy Guerin, and just look out and see them and say, gee, I'm going to join this field. That's pretty incredible.
So what's your advice to not only someone like your grandson, but other players who are trying to get involved in the sport and make a name for themselves, because it is very hard to do?
Enjoy the process. have fun with your teammates. I always think that, there's a Hockey Hall of Fame, but there's also a Hockey Hall of Fame for all the players. You're going to be an all-star in your role. If you're not a fourth-line kid, be an Hall of Famer in the fourth-line role. If you're the manager on the team, become a Hockey Hall of Famer in that role. So when you get people to accept their roles and be good teammates, that's part of creating culture. That produces championships, and I think that's what Kevin Quinn has done with this team. Brought that team culture. Hey, we're a team first. Your ego stays out in the parking lot. You're a Quaker Valley player. And as more coaches understand the value of team above everything else, I know individual skills are great and everything else, but the team comes first, and I think that's something that we all can learn.
Do you still watch hockey like at the NHL? Do you have any predictions, or do you still keep in contact with some of the players you coach? Like, what do you do nowadays?
Well, I stay busy. I like I said, I'd like to be a Hall of Fame grandfather. That's my goal now. But I watched all the hockey. I'm, of course, a big Boston Bruins fan, and we're fighting to get back in this thing. But I've known Dan Muse for a long time with Pittsburgh, and he's done a great job with the Penguins. And it's great to be involved in college hockey because of the people I meet, like you, Trey.
Thank you, Mr. York. Well, we'll let you get back to the game. Thank you so much to Hall of Famer Jerry York for joining us on the broadcast and giving us all sorts of insight. Let's send it back to the guys up in the broadcast booth to start the third period.